Okay, well, it's in fact 2 months since we last have been talking social enterprise on this initiative that Jaco, Marcus, and myself thought would be a great way to introduce topics of importance in the social enterprise space, whether it is as non-for-profit organizations or as entrepreneurs that are doing interesting stuff in the space of running businesses that also have a good social impact. We may today focus a bit more on the NPO space and specifically income streams, an interesting topic to cover, and one that we all know that NPOs are increasingly looking at as an important way of increasing or improving their sustainability likeliness. So, like normal, it's myself, Christoph, Jaco Slabbert, Marcus Coetzee, and tonight we've got Selma with us from Greater Capital. We'll do more of the introductions a bit later. But before we get into our program, so people that have joined us previously would know that we try to share some news and activities and events and opportunities that are upcoming, as well as tackle a topic that will be of insight and help in making sure that we increase our impact. So normally Jaco is the guy that goes through the research and so on to find all these interesting things that are happening. So we'll come to that slot first, and then we'll have the discussion about the topic of tonight, which is how NPOs can go about in making sure that they increase their revenue streams beyond the donation source. But before we start, Marcus, it's been holiday, in fact, sort of. So that's why we had the break. What have you been up to? And it's a bit late. It's already February, but sort of it is still the new year. Marcus, what have you been up to, and how does the new year look for you in this space?
New Year certainly took off busier than I expected, and very, very quickly it got going. And most of my activity at the moment has been focused around Social Enterprise Academy, who's running an internship program for some visitors from Oslo, in fact, to Cape Town social enterprises, and working with Jaco on that. And I've been preparing a huge amount of presentation and lecture material, and to start lecturing more. And in fact, tomorrow I'm doing a day of lectures on social enterprise and their business models at the UCT's business school. So that will be the end of a lot of preparation. But otherwise, this year is looking incredibly busy in the space.
Christoph, we've seen you are muted.
Yes, Christoph is muted.
I was so keen in instructing others to mute when they don't speak that I forgot to unmute myself. That happens. Now, I was asking Marcus whether there's a tidbit that you can share with us in terms of the preparations that you've been doing, and maybe a new insight that you've gained that you're going to be teaching.
Well, it's preparation, I realize, for a lecture that conveys a lot of useful content takes a hell of a lot of time. Way, way, way more time than I thought. So if anything, I've gained a new respect for the amount of effort that lecturers and trainers put into the material to get it to be really of a good standard. And in preparing the lectures, I mean, I suppose my biggest insight was that how social entrepreneurship has become a social movement, and it seems to have moved beyond just a couple of well-known and famous individuals, and it's started to become something much greater. So, sorry, that's helicopter outside, and making the noise. But that's myself. So I've bought a whole bunch of books on social entrepreneurship and preparation, and it seems to be, like almost a force that's beginning to sweep the world as people start taking responsibility to be creative, apply business thinking, and start fixing the problems around them. So in that sense, I'm quite an optimist.
Great. Can we sneak into your class?
Tomorrow at the business school.
Yeah. Jaco, and yourself, you've been busy. You're sitting at the office waiting for power failure to happen, you said earlier. Hopefully not.
I am. I'm partly sitting at the office because I kind of had too much work to justify going all the way home, working there, and then coming back here because my internet at home is actually terrible right now. We're trying to get it fixed by Telkom. But yeah, things have been really really good so far this year. I mean, it's February already. I feel like this last month has just gone by in a massive whoosh, um, with no respect for free time or anything like that. So it's been great. Most of my work has unfortunately not been so heavily social enterprise driven. I do quite a bit of freelance work with Imani Development, the guys that are sort of partly behind SEA Africa. And there's been a lot of work for the World Bank that we've been doing, so that's been keeping me quite busy. There's a lot of very interesting research on how retailers operate throughout Africa and things like how their value chains are developed and so on. So it's been quite interesting. But beyond that, obviously myself and Marcus working on this SEA program with the Oslo students. And that's going to be properly interesting. I think specifically because this is going to be a 3-month intern placement program that we're going to be coordinating. And what's lovely is that they're not your conventional "we're here to save the world" kind of volunteers and interns. They're really highly educated, well-skilled individuals with a breadth of knowledge and work experience that are going to be placed with a host organization as a consultant and has the opportunity to really help the host organization achieve something great and achieve a fantastic outcome in their time here. So that's part and parcel of one of the opportunities that I'm going to be mentioning in news, is that we are looking for a few host organizations to add to our list. So if there is anybody that can contact me, but I will send some more details on the sort of news items. But other than that, this year looks very exciting for social entrepreneurship. I think there's going to be a lot of programs coming up. There's going to be a lot of training as usual. That seems to be doing quite well. And I think a big part of the buzz this year is going to be all around sort of monitoring and evaluation and a lot of proving concept. It's something I think that has been lacking for a long time, but there's been a tremendous amount of discussion around M&E, and it's been infiltrating the social enterprise space a lot. And I'm excited about that, simply because it means that now enterprises can show and prove that what they do actually has impact. So yeah, it looks like it's going to be a good year.
Yeah. If I can ask you about the intern placements. So when you organize interns, specifically foreign interns, to be placed at the social enterprise, how do you make sure that the social enterprise gets optimum benefit out of that? Are there ways that organizations can, when you say you're actually looking for more too, sort of when they take interns in, that it's not just kind of a nice holiday placement for the intern, but that it's also something of use for the organization?
Yeah, it's tricky, specifically because often a volunteer is more of puts more strain on an organization, and it's seldom that a volunteer really is massive benefit to an organization. They're often just additional hands, if anything. But it's about the placement process more than anything else. Fortunately, these volunteers and often if you deal with somebody that is in an intern position as opposed to a volunteer position, they're here for experience. They're here to really benefit out of it, out of the experience that they get with the organization, challenging themselves to deliver on a very particular set of outcomes. And that's why it's important for whoever places you with an organization, that relationship that they have with the organization is very clearly defined, and also that the position that the intern is placed in is also very clearly defined with regards to what is expected of them, what their kind of outcomes would be, and really what the purpose is of having them here. And this is where the difference comes in between placing somebody with, let's say, a small orphanage to just be an extra set of hands and help them look after kids, which is also a great thing to do. I think there's definitely opportunity for that kind of volunteering. But what we try and focus on is really giving an organization a useful resource for a limited period of time. And even internships and volunteers aren't really free as such. It still costs the organization time and resources. So it's about sort of offsetting the costs that aren't necessarily financial costs, but offsetting that towards the outcomes. And that's what the key process is here. That's also why the organizations that we select to place interns with, a key thing is really sort of that engagement process and the negotiation of what exactly do you want, and can we find somebody that can match that for you? Because if we can't, we'd rather not place somebody with you than have somebody there that's really just going to waste your time.
Yeah,
because it is often a burden.
Yeah, it sounds like a topic that we can dedicate to one Talking Social Enterprise episode on its own.
I definitely think we should.
Yeah. So, by the way, guys, I met Salma on Saturday. I think it was Saturday, Selma, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
At a common friend's 50th birthday party, and I looked at this person, and the face looked familiar, and the name sounded familiar. But yeah, so nice seeing you again. I had a great weekend. It was a camping 50th get-together party, and it was quite enjoyable connecting with people that I haven't seen for a long time, and some new ones too. So you made your way safely home, it looks like.
Yes, out of the wilderness.
Yeah. Selma, before we get to the topic of the day, what is news within your organizational network, and any new developments or something exciting happening that you'd like to share with us today?
Well, yes. So on the one hand, Greater Capital is growing, so we are going to start looking for sort of senior people and mid-level to junior people to actually join our team of researchers and evaluators. I think speaking to Jaco's point about M&E being a kind of big buzz at the moment, what that does translate to is that Greater Capital seems to be getting a lot of calls for that type of work. So, that's really great. And we have Refilwe Mokwena, who joined our team as well. She comes from Vision Fund, and she started in January. So likewise, the year has started off with a huge bang. I think it already feels as though we've gone through about 6 months in this first month. So it's been quite intense, and which is good. But I think it's going to be very exciting. I think there's a lot of exciting things happening. There's sort of a lot of focus not only on South Africa, but Southern Africa and Africa in general. And I think, especially where social enterprises are concerned, there are a lot of there's a lot of interest. And it seems to be, like Marcus was saying, not, previously it would have been a select few that would have sort of bought into the idea of an enterprise that addresses social challenges, but now it seems as though that's becoming a lot more mainstream, as though that is actually what people are wanting their businesses to do, and that's becoming more the kind of thinking behind the launching of any new business, especially by the younger crowd. So I think that's quite interesting. We've got our we would like to have it an annual conference, but it's not really. It's our Southern African Impact Investing Network conference coming up on the 16th and 17th of February in Johannesburg, in Sandton, and we will, as usual, which we try to make very much a part of the conference, is because we have people who are interested in social enterprise there, we have a small competition that we're running for social enterprises to actually have a pitching session on the second day of the conference, so that they will actually, and we're in the process of sort of going through the applications that we've received, and we've received quite a few, and it's very difficult to make a choice. It's we've got some really strong ones, new ones as well, which is very exciting, but you can really see the thinking behind the business model and how it fits in with addressing social challenges coming through quite strongly. I have the lucky and not so lucky position of actually being on the committee that will figure out who the finalists are that will be at the pitching session. So I think that's going to be quite exciting, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Great stuff. Nothing like a bit of competition as well, sort of to get the spirit going. Are you on your laptop, Salma?
Yes, I am.
I want to do a quick experiment. If you unplug your headset, because we do get a bit of a buzz. We do get a bit of a buzz when you speak on your headset. Is it unplugged now?
Okay. Hold on a sec. Let me do that.
The sound may be better straight from the computer. Can you speak now?
It's just I've got someone else in the room. Let me just let me warn them that I am actually unplugging.
And if you speak now? Now we can't hear you at all. So that wasn't a good plan. We can't hear at all. There's no sound. Okay, so we will come back to Salma just now. She can plug in a headset again. I thought that may help us in improving the sound. She's not disappearing. It looks like it, but she's not. Jaco, can I hand over to you? You've been sitting there as if a frozen person, so on my screen.
It's because somebody has to get the live stream on Facebook and on Twitter and on everything, you know. So I'm just doing some background work quickly.
Okay, great. But yeah, Salma led us into events. So can you share us what you found out there is happening out there in everything social entrepreneurial?
Definitely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start actually with the Impact Investment Conference, because that was one of them that was on there. So thanks for mentioning that, Salma. But yeah, it's obviously sort of the premier event for impact investing in Southern Africa. There's no question about it that it's a great place for any social entrepreneur to be. It's a great place for any impact investor to be. It's a great place for any support organization to be, and anybody that's interested in the space. And wants to see where cash is going, how it's being utilized best, and what this whole concept of impact investment really is about. That's kind of the place to be. So 16th and 17th of Feb, it'll be running. I'll be posting details, obviously, as always, of all the events on our Facebook page and on our website. So you can get particular details on pricing and so on there. Beyond that, then there's another great event coming up with Green Pop, which is also on the 18th of Feb. Some of you may be aware of Green Pop's Zambia Festival of Action. I think this is the 4th year that they've been doing this. But essentially, it is a massive volunteer exodus almost to Zambia, where they do a huge reforestation project. And it's an absolutely spectacular experience. From all the videos that I've seen and everybody that I've spoken to that has participated, they've all come back sort of revitalized and re-energized from this just amazing sort of festival of change. The festival itself happens a little later in the year, I think sort of March-ish or so. But this particular event on the 18th is just sort of the hype event. And that's happening in Cape Town. So that's going to be a great one to go to. So those are the only two real sort of big events that I've got that are sort of popping up right now. But there are a few other opportunities that I'd like to mention. One is the Hack Jozi Challenge that's being driven by the city of Johannesburg and then the Jozi Hub. This Hack Jozi event is essentially going to be a get-together for sort of digital entrepreneurs and tech entrepreneurs that are excited to just get together and get to know a whole bunch of other tech entrepreneurs working in the space, pitch a couple of ideas, potentially get some funding out of it, or at least have the opportunity to build partnerships. So great little boot camp to go to if you are in Johannesburg and if you are keen on getting your sort of tech idea out there. I think they're taking applications up to the 13th of Feb, so that's still another sort of 10 days or so for everybody to apply. And that's going to be a great event to go to if you are up there. And I definitely advise anybody in the tech space, even if you're not tech savvy yourself, but you're interested in the tech space, it's going to be a great opportunity to sort of just put your idea to the test. Other than that, there's another training program coming from Seed Academy. Seed Academy is Cape Town based, if I remember correctly, and they are focusing on just sort of almost sort of crash course over 10 weeks on entrepreneurial support and helping you sort of get your business acumen ready, getting some real practical training on how to take something from concept to rollout. And it also has a whole bunch of business support programs that run for about 18 months after this program. So it's a long-term commitment, but it's really, really great support. And I know that they're looking for entrepreneurs at this stage to join the program. I'm not 100% sure when exactly it starts, but again, those details I'll pop onto the Facebook page. Then two items that I thought was just interesting to mention. The first one being that myself, Marcus and Bev have applied to sort of bring the Unreasonable Institute to South Africa. Some of you may know about the Unreasonable Institute. They started off in Boulder, Colorado, in the States, and it's such a fantastic acceleration program that was put together for social entrepreneurs. They've expanded to East Africa and to Mexico, and right now they're actually going through a shortlisting process for what's called the Unreasonable Lab, which is essentially a 5-day sort of crash course accelerator for social enterprises. And we're hoping to bring one to Cape Town, but I believe they got 150 applications from 60 countries. So I'm not sure if we're going to be in the top list, but hopefully we'll make the short list. And then we'll be able to bring that to South Africa and to Cape Town specifically. So we'll have an update on that pretty soon. I think we'll hear next week whether we've made the short list. And then from there, the process will probably be another week or two before we know if we've got it for sure. So keep your eyes peeled on that. And then lastly, some of you may remember a couple of months ago already, we were talking about the Green Pioneer Accelerator that was being driven by VC for Africa, Impact Amplifier, and a few other players that were looking specifically for entrepreneurs working in the green space and in renewable energy and anywhere in the green economy. And they've just recently announced all of the entrepreneurs that were selected to join the program. For the Kenyan program, there are a couple of really, really exciting ones, but the South African one I'm excited to see that we've got Vijay from Shakti Energy there, who's, I think everybody that sort of operates in Cape Town and knows Vijay quite well, and has seen him sort of around and seen Shakti Energy around quite a bit. And then also Mellow Cabs, which is sort of one of the better known startup cab services that have been running around the city. They're also going to be joining this program, so I think that's going to be really, really exciting. I'll post a link to just to the whole list of entrepreneurs also on the Facebook page, so that you can have a look at who's been selected. And also, if you don't know any of these guys, feel free to just sort of explore what they're doing. There might be a couple of opportunities for synergy. If you're an investor, they might be interesting to look into and perhaps to throw some investments at, or just in general, just to connect with. So I think it's going to be a great group. It looks like a really, really a good group of entrepreneurs that they've got going here. So as always, have a squiz at our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Talking Social Enterprise, or go to our website, which is www.talkingsocialenterprise.net, and you'll be able to both find all of the details and links to all of these events and news items that I've listed, as well as be able to find our whole back catalog of all of the other Talking Social Enterprise editions and broadcasts that we've already gone through. So if you missed one a couple of months ago or in any other last months, feel free to go and check that out there. But yeah, as per usual, check out those two sites and stay updated. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks a lot, Christoph. Back to you.
Yeah, so I don't even have to ask a question like where do people find the detail of this, because you already told us all of that. Thank you very much, Jaco. It's always interesting to hear the more and more things happening out there that one can participate in and develop yourself and your organization through. So great stuff. I was thinking we're already 25 minutes into our call today, so time does fly when you have fun, they say. I don't see Salma's picture right now, so I'm not quite sure. Salma, if you are there, can you speak up if you can hear us?
Yes, I can see her, but she's muted.
Okay. Can you try unmute yourself, Salma? Now you're muted, and now you're unmuted. Yeah. Can you speak? Or did we by unplugging you at one point made a fatal mistake, and now we can't get any voice from you at all? Perhaps I wonder if I should suggest this, that you close the tab that you're in now, and you reopen and click on that same link that you did when you came into the call. And then, yep, that's good. So, Marcus, time for us to talk about your ebook, I think. So, maybe someone is fresh into this call and would know, and talking social enterprise won't know that we've in fact been covering some of the topics that you wrote about in your ebook. What is that all about?
Well, and in the process of studying and working with social enterprises, I identified 10, and you could say, elements of the social enterprise paradigm that any organization, if they're a business or a nonprofit or something, can follow and can learn from. So we're actually, this show links, I believe, point number 6 or 7, which is all about generating income. And this is something that's very important and at the same time very difficult for nonprofit organizations. So we're hoping that this call will shed some insights on what South African nonprofits can do to become more social enterprise-like and to start earning income with a profit, hopefully, and in order to cover their costs and help them fulfill their purpose.
So if someone is interested in reading about all those topics that you wrote about, how do they go about getting a copy of the ebook?
And the best thing to do is just go to Google Marcus Coetzee, go to my website, it's on the website. There's other articles, presentations about similar things that they can get there.
Okay.
And,
correct.
Or email me and I'll send it to them. So it's not difficult to get.
Cool. There's only one Marcus Coetzee in the world.
Or in fact, there are other ones, but they're most probably angry with me because I dominate at least my name in the internet.
Great, good to know. So Salma, shall we try again? Would you like to unmute yourself if we can hear you this time around? Ah, that's great.
Okay, great.
That's great. Yes. This is the thing about the technology is that if everything else fails, restart. So the formal discussion isn't prescribed or too formal, but Marcus will lead us in talking to you, Salma. So Jaco and myself will take a bit of a back seat in this discussion, but it doesn't mean that we may not butt in with a comment or a question as we go along. So Marcus, if I can hand over to you.
Perfect. Okay. So, firstly, welcome, Salma. And it's good to have you on the show tonight. And just some background, and I met Salma, I think, for the first time, it was a couple of months ago, and Salma took over the reins of Greater Capital, a social enterprise I know very well. And when was that, Salma, that you took over?
It was actually in June 2014.
Was it June? Wow, yes. Time flies. Okay,
yes.
Time really flies. And Greater Capital is one of the top social enterprises in South Africa, so I'm sure we'll have lots of insights from that. And let's just start by talking about what Greater Capital currently does. Now, you talked about research and evaluation services, but I gather you're also quite active in the investment space with this conference that you're setting up.
Yes, so a lot of what we do is actually help from the impact investing space is we help investees from a high impact fund essentially just to identify what their social impact them and be able to tell the impact story over time, along with the financial story. So getting away from the idea that most of the financial services have, that, you know, if you're talking about a social impact, essentially you're talking about philanthropy funds, and really setting the kind of proof, you know, that it's not philanthropy. You can have a social, you know, return alongside a financial return, quite a healthy financial return as well, and you know that this is one of the key ways in which you can actually address challenges in South Africa.
Okay. And I know you've done a lot of work recently for the ILO as well, the International Labour Organization,
yes.
in the social enterprise area.
Yes. So there were two particular projects that we helped them with. They kind of fit into the sort of broader scope of what they're doing, but the two components that we looked at, one was looking at a kind of mapping of the social enterprise world in or ecosystem within the Free State, and also looking generally at challenges that social enterprises, and we're talking about, I think, you know, if you take the ILO definition of a social enterprise, we would really be looking at sort of co-ops, you know, very kind of rural settings. So it was really looking at the challenges that they face, and we looked at the Free State, we looked at Western Cape, we looked at Eastern Cape, we looked at KZN, and we looked at Johannesburg as well. So, you know, what challenges they face in access to markets, in you know, their own kind of understanding of how to run a co-op, and the, you know, the one of the big challenges was also with access to finance. So really mapping that out for ILO. And the second project that we looked at was it's two areas that we're actually looking at. One is in KZN and one is in the Free State, but it's looking at how to bring these co-ops or these social enterprises into the public procurement chain. So for municipalities, and, you know, and to what extent that actually is working really well or isn't. So a lot of time was spent with the municipalities themselves, asking the questions around, you know, their strategies for bringing social enterprises, these co-ops, into their procurement chain, and you know, if that wasn't happening, then what were the barriers and why. So those were very interesting pieces. And what we're doing at the moment as well is a piece of work for Trias, which is looking at, they have a slightly different approach in that they're working with chambers of commerce to help social enterprises. So it's really looking at how that strategy really works in a South African context, and whether that can be tweaked, or, you know, whether a different approach needs to be used.
At the moment, just on that point, there's firstly the ILO is, for people who don't know, is very active in the procurement space in South Africa, trying to essentially get social enterprises to be part of the supply chain of big businesses and the government. And about the other issue you mentioned about chambers of commerce, I know that there's an attempt to set up a social enterprise industry body that's trying to link with the various chambers of commerce at the moment. Okay.
Yeah.
But,
so we've kind of just started the sort of research into that area. So I think what we're really trying to do is just see exactly what's happening in the space, and get a very good understanding of how the chambers of commerce, you know, what sort of strategies they're looking at, and how that would be rolled out, and how that fits into the broader scheme of support for social enterprises.
Okay. So let's start talking then about, and I'd like to focus initially on start off with the journey about Greater Capital. So Greater Capital came out of Greater Good, as I understand. And how did that happen? I mean, why was Greater Capital launched in the first place?
So Greater Good was essentially started. Greater Good South Africa Trust was essentially started to funnel resources. Mostly funding resources to small NGOs, grassroots NGOs, those that really struggled with getting funding for their activities. And the idea behind that, we had an online platform that we used for donations, and the idea behind that was that we would play a very strong advocacy role in encouraging people to donate towards NGOs and help them to basically be sustainable. A lot of our activities were funded through donations, and we very quickly realized that that wasn't sustainable for ourselves. So the way Greater Capital, but what we had was a very strong model in terms of our evaluation process and our due diligence process into these NGOs that we were funding or directing funding towards. So we basically used those skills to design an evaluation process, an M&E process, essentially products, if you like, that we would be able to market through Greater Capital. And the idea was that Greater Capital would then be the sustainability arm for the Greater Good South African Trust.
Sorry, Salma, if I may interrupt, that's a very important point, this idea of taking an existing capability of an organization, finding a way to package it into a product that serves a different market, still with a social angle to it, but something where you can generate much more income and use it to funnel in and serve the original organization. So that's already a bit of a hybrid model that started there.
Yes. So, and I think that is what actually made it quite interesting, is that essentially we ended up straddling the two worlds, kind of the corporate investor world and the NGO, social enterprise kind of, the whole chain. And the idea was really how to bring the knowledge that we had of the NPO world, their needs, their kind of, the challenges they were addressing, or the developmental expertise that we had, and bring that into the strategies for your CSI clients, for your, developmental practitioners, etc., who are wanting, international NGOs who want to do interventions in South Africa, for instance, but we would be able to help them with the South African context, with the design, tweaking it so that it actually fits the purpose. And I think that actually really helped, because once again, like you say, it was taking what we already knew, building on that, and then being able to make that and make people realize the value of that as well. So that at the moment it's something that's quite sought after.
Yeah, definitely. And so how many years ago was that when Greater Capital was formed?
It was in 2005.
So 2005. And how long was it before you generated all your income where you didn't actually need donations at all, Greater Capital?
So the last kind of grant income that we had was at the end of 2012. So basically since 2013 we've actually been fully self-funded.
So it took 7 years then for the journey.
Yeah.
I mean, that shows that this is not done quickly.
No, definitely not. And, what it included a lot of was actually building up the track record in terms of what we were able to do. So, if, for instance, we say that we can do evaluations, what a lot of clients would want to know is what evaluation expertise have you had previously. So it was the building of the track record. It was almost the building of your brand in that particular area. So, now we have two distinct brands. We have Greater Good South Africa, but we also have Greater Capital brand. And we have on our website, a very niche, interesting kind of infographic that shows you exactly how the two fit together. But I think, that was the main thing, was really building the track record and building brand.
And Greater Capital is it bigger than Greater Good now?
It is.
So you became bigger than the parent organization.
We did, but what's really interesting about that is that with Greater Good now, we can really be very strategic in how we help NGO. We can, and because we have the funding, we have the time, and we have the energy, we can really look at burning issues and say, okay, how do we actually help, with capacity building, with whatever it is that needs to be happening, transformation or anything like that. So it really gives us a lot of room to shape our focus in a way that's actually meaningful for NGOs.
So because you're not because you're not reliant on donor funds, and donors tend to have their own agendas, you're generating a surplus in your consulting work, and that then allows you freedom to decide exactly where you want to intervene in the sector to help organizations grow and help communities. Am I correct?
Absolutely, that's it exactly.
Okay, and in your journey, I mean, there must have been quite a number of challenges, I imagine, that you over the 7 years it took, that you had to overcome. And perhaps you can share with us what some of the challenges are, because I'm sure other organizations will also be facing them.
Sure. I think the main ones for us was really in getting people or clients really to understand the value of the work we did. So if you say you're doing an evaluation, what exactly is, how do you see the value in that, and getting them to understand that essentially you were employing an expert developmental oversight and research, etc., into what they were wanting to do. The other one, I think, which is everything that a new organization or a new business would start with was cash flow issues. So we had lean months, some really scary months, and months where and that was where it was really great to still have a little bit of the donation, the grant funding to bridge that gap a bit for us, and allow us to slowly become fully self-funded, so that we were able to actually build on that. And the other thing was also about finding the right people for Greater Capital, because you need very kind of specific skills, and also to be able to develop those skills over time.
What type of skills were there? Because I was expecting you to make that comment about skills, because that's something a lot of organizations struggle with, is developing a new capability and developing a new skill set that they need to move into the slightly more commercial way of doing things.
So it was really, I mean, the type of skills is we need people who have some kind of, background in the sort of developmental sector or social science kind of sector. And then it was really about developing their ability to, analyze data, collect data, be able to do focus group interviews too. So all those skills had to really be developed, and also the kind of tools that we use for the work that we do. There was a lot of refining and sort of piloting and tweaking, and that had to happen until we were very satisfied that what essentially we had, the products that we had, were really kind of designed in the best way possible. And so, it was kind of a, that even in the NGO sector, there are sort of different areas that you look at. There's healthcare, there's education, there's youth employment, and really trying to find, one way would be to find a person who's skilled in a particular sector, but then you end up with like 20 people in your organization. But the other thing was to actually develop our staff internally and it was an interesting thing, because we basically looked at what the passion was that our staff had for a particular developmental angle, and we married that to what their skills development would be in-house. So, for instance, my particular development would be in education. Yeah, so mine was education, youth employment, youth development. My colleague would be, would be in healthcare, would be in development of women and children, particular focus on rural areas. So you kind of develop that internally.
Okay. And Did you encounter any resistance or hostility, either on the board or outside or something, to this shift that you are undergoing, to move away from donations and this vision that you could support yourself through your own income?
I think there was across the board kind of realization that that's what we needed to do, because we really could see how difficult it was becoming to access donor funding, especially grant funding. And the responsible thing that we felt is really, if we are trying to find funding to direct to NGOs, then it didn't seem right that we would be in the same kind of pool trying to swim, and get a share from there. So I think there was across the board kind of buy-in, and it wasn't easy, definitely. There were conversations along the line about whether this was the right approach, whether we, and especially when you hit the lean months and you hit the, where you basically sitting with a staff complement and you saying, I only have sort of 2 months in the bank and I don't know what's going to happen after that. There were some tough calls that needed to be made about whether you continue or whether you actually close this down. But I think it really was the absolute faith and the driving force of, and it's interesting because it was several different people along the line, before we got to sort of me taking over, but each one was consistent in the belief that this would work and that there was a way that this would actually come out the way we intended.
And it's done very well, I must say. So it's always encouraging for me to see, because I remember the very early days of Greater Capital, and to see how how big it is now, the type of work that it does, the skills that it has to offer people. And do you think this shift is, well, let's say, I've, in the 18 years that I've worked with non-profit organizations, I've definitely noticed the market becoming much more competitive and funding becoming much more difficult for individual organizations to attract. And yet, looking at the general sector, certainly on one hand there's a shift towards this idea that we can become more social enterprise-like in our approach. And at the same time, there seems to be almost a negative reaction to it, with some people within the sector holding the view that this shouldn't be happening and there should just be more money being given to them and so on. What is your view on this dynamic?
I think, there will be organizations where it will be very difficult for them to kind of have a social enterprise kind of view, and there is a space for them. So if you're taking your typical kind of welfare organization or something
children's
like that,
home or something like that.
Absolutely. But there are organizations where I think the difficulty is that, and what is kind of general statement that I will make is that NGOs tend to run really thin on staff on everything. So I think sometimes there's just the idea of the amount of work that would be involved in having to change strategy, in having to think differently, in having to put all of that into place. There's no energy for that. So, then the thinking would be, I think we should just remain and keep doing what we need to do. But also, I think, it does take someone with a certain kind of vision to actually say, this is how I think it can be done. And sometimes I think NGOs need a bit of hand-holding through that process. And it helps to have someone who's gone through that to be able to actually sit with you and say, I think this is how you can potentially do it. And certainly there's been a shift over the past maybe 3 or 4 years. I think NGOs are starting to get a lot more, or to start being a lot more open to the idea. And really a lot of the questions that we sometimes get is, I am thinking about sustainability. These are the 1, 2, 3 things that I've thought about. How do you do you think that would work, and how do we start with that? So I think that shift is coming slowly. Yeah.
No, I agree with that. Definitely over the last 3 or 4 years, it's definitely been accelerating. From if I recall my initial conversations with organizations about this idea of profit or sustainability in the 1990s already. A lot of them were met with quite a lot of hostility or almost people just didn't really understand what I was trying to get at. And now it's encouraging to see how many people are having these conversations. And then I've got one last question before we hand back to Christoph and Jaco, is what advice would you give an organization, okay, that is beginning to become or adopt the social enterprise journey? So you've already given one or two things. You said it's good to have someone who's gone through the process. You need vision and passion. You need to invest in skills and find some sort of surplus energy that you can use. And are there any other points of advice that you'd like to share?
I think generally I would suggest what really helped us as well was being very kind of open, because there are a lot of people in the NGO sector who really would like to see NGOs become more self-sustainable, and work with those people, be open to that, and there are lots of networks that you can tap into, and there are a lot of people who would be willing to help. So that's another thing that I would say is, if you're going down that path, there are the right people that you can speak to, and certainly from Greater Capital's perspective, we'd be more than happy to put people in touch with, we have a lot of knowledge of people who would be able to assist and get in touch with us. We'd be happy to point them in the right direction, or even to just sit and say, this is my plan, does it make sense? And we'd be happy to give input on that as well.
Excellent. No, I'm sure they definitely would appreciate that. And just checking if Christoph, are you there? Perfect.
Yeah,
do you have any questions of Salma?
I've been fascinated because it's not a story that you often hear. I mean, we hear a lot of stories of people that go out and try to add some new dimensions to their organizations, and find it extremely difficult. So yeah, as your discussion went along, I think a few questions came up in terms of my experience in discussions that I have with organizations looking at adding income streams to what they already have. And I think that message I clearly got, Selma, from you, that it's not just a switch over. It's not the flip of a switch. It is something. It's a gradual process of adding more to what you already have, and in some instances probably not even replacing what you already have. But there's this notion that, and I suppose that your experience or your example of Greater Capital now being a larger organization, if I can call that, than Greater Good, that when you go into the space of creating income streams, specifically if it's not just consulting services or so on, but also cash generating, more business oriented activities, that the tail is going to wag the dog. So there's a fear, and there's a big fear. And so how would you say one addresses that fear that people have, that there's we're going to start off with something here that looks kind of small, and it kind of sounds like the right thing because people say we need to become more sustainable, but over time it may overtake us, and it may in fact overtake our purpose to such a degree that the organization is not what it was intended to be.
I think the main thing is not to basically lose sight of what you started the organization, and why you started the organization, and what it was that you wanted it to be. And strategy and approach for any organization does change over time, and as you have leadership change, they bring in new aspects, they change things. But the main thing is to actually remember, when we started this organization, what was it that we wanted the organization to do? So at the moment, as much as I'll give my own experience, as much as I'm setting the strategy and driving the strategy for Greater Capital, Greater Good does not go off the table simply because it's not as big as Greater Capital. It sits alongside Greater Capital, and so the focus is equal on both of them, and is always, and that's how it always should be. So it's a difficult thing to play, because in essence you're you end up with two things that you're now having to work with. But at the end of the day, you know, when you look at the benefit of it, we're self-sustaining, we're able to really be a lot more independent and more focused in our approaches. I think, you know, the benefit is there for us as well.
And specifically fear, which sits in people. And I'm not sure, you know, you don't have to share the detail of the kind of processes that you went through, but are there ways that one can address fears to help people to be a bit more braver in taking on new things when it comes to these kind of shifts?
I think the thing that worked for us is that, you know, when we were afraid, we basically opened up and said to people, we're concerned about this, that, and the other that's actually happening in Greater Capital. And what was amazing is that we received so much assistance. So, you know, the thing is, you know, when they say a problem shared is a problem halved, I think that's something that needs to be taken to heart, is that there are many people, like I said before, who really would like you to succeed, and, you know, feel free to reach out to. You never know where you will get assistance from, and I think that's one thing that we learned quite early on as well. And it really does help, because then you start to build a kind of a network of support for your organization, but a very valuable network, you know, and I think that really helps to allay the fears, because it's a thing and it's not this kind of scary beast that you're taking on your own. So I think that really does help.
Yeah.
I've noticed the same thing. Sorry, Christoph, how many people are actually willing to help? You know, if an organization actually, I mean, it's different if someone just says, I want money as an organization, but if they say, I need this type of expertise and this type of expertise, and rather sort of fundraise for expertise, and how many people are actually willing to provide that? And that's something I've noticed recently.
Yeah. So speaking of expertise, because that's the second. By the way, I think the power cut Jaco off our call too. So he's gone with the power cut, but hopefully he'll be back next time. On that thought of expertise, so Salma, what I heard you say, and I think this is perhaps a contrary to the natural inclination of people that are purpose-driven and want to achieve big impact with what they do in the organizations, is that you have to go and carefully look at what the value is that you have inside of your people, to be able to offer that in a way that it can generate income, in a way to an honest assessment of your capacity and the value that you can offer through the people that you have, not necessarily first asking what is the kind of the game that we want to play, what is the impact that we want to have, in a sort of what are the services that we want to sell out there, but rather ask what is it that we already have that we can sell and offer for a monetary exchange. So would you say that is accurate summary of the way that you saw it? Or how did you? It sounds very wise, you know, sort of if one listens to the story that you tell, to rather focus on that value that you already have than try to go create something which is huge out there and that may be difficult.
And I think that was basically it. It was really saying, you know, what are we good at? What do we know that we can do that could be of value to someone else? And essentially, it's not difficult for you to then be able to actually put that product together, because you already have the skill, you already have the product. It really then is just about refining it and maybe putting it into a package that, you know, a client would be able to say, okay, that is something that I can see the value in. So there were a lot of round the table discussions around, you know, the kind of internal value that you see, but there were also external discussions, you know, around from the services or the things that we do, what do you think is valuable? And, you know, that's also an important thing, is to invite people into that process. I know, you know, maybe not so much at the now, but previously everyone in the NGO sector was kind of very guarded about what they did and how they did it, and you know, and I think the thing is, to an extent, you know, there's an understanding of, you know, intellectual property, etc. But I think when there are challenges, there are ways that you can actually access assistance to help you with those challenges. Mm-hmm. So ours was really about getting in help to, you know, for people to say, well, you know, this is how I think you can package something, and then also just getting help in saying, you know, in terms of our own staff development, because, you know, you're taking your staff along a journey with you, and they would also need to be developed just the same way that your products are being done, etc. So it really was about that, getting those components right.
And just to, sorry, Christoph, if I can just comment quickly on something Salma said. And I like the fact that she's referred to this idea of packaging. And it's looking at one's services, and packaging involves building a product with it, and a unit almost that could have its own brand, that comes with a combination of perhaps different goods and services, and that's got a particular duration, it looks a certain way. It just makes it much easier for someone to buy, and it also enables one to put a profit margin on it. So I mean, you know, that's something that one of the principles all in the whole social enterprise paradigm is about. Take what you do and package it really, really nicely, and make it really attractive for your customer. And organizations just don't do enough of that.
Yeah, that sounds like a good note to end our discussion on today, because we are over the hour already as well. So, Salma, thank you very much. That was really insightful, and those people that are fearful of starting something can see in the example that you've set that it's possible to do, and something to learn of. And I think the learning that I take away today is that it's never be fearful to ask for advice, because it's probably out there, and you can probably get it. So, thanks, Marcus, for you as well. Is there the last thing that you would like to say today?
Yeah, I just also want to observe that it took 7 years. It wasn't something that happened overnight. Yeah. So for organizations that are 1 or 2 or 3 years into the journey, just keep at it. Is all I could say. This is not something that's easy for people to do. Yeah. You know, but when you've done it, you're in a much stronger position.
Yeah. So, Salma, is there a last word from your side in terms of what you've learned and what you think others can learn from you?
I think I would actually echo exactly what Marcus said, is that, you know, it's a journey, and some journeys are longer than others, you know, and if you're wanting to build something that really has meaning and that really, it takes time, and you know, be in for the long haul, and you will see the results, you know. So, and of course, be open to people assisting along the way, because I think, you know, having gone through it's now going to be my 6th year with Greater Capital, and having been on the journey for that number of years, it definitely is worth it. So yeah, that's the advice I would definitely give.
Great. So with that, that then brings us to the end of our journey for the evening. A short journey, but a really insightful one. And looking forward to our next installment. We'll post on the Facebook page and on our website the next topic. And please be invited, and click there on the link to join us for our next Talking Social Enterprise. And with that, we would say we sign out and goodbye.
Yeah, and thank you, Salma, for joining us tonight.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this.